I think it's time for me to read the Hunger Games series. To be completely honest, I have already read the original trilogy. I don't think I've read the books since high school, and it's been a few years since I've seen the movies. So I know what happens, but I kind of forgot. I want to reread the original trilogy, and then I want to read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, and then ultimately Sunrise on the Reaping. The whole reason I'm starting this is because I have a hold on Sunrise on the Reaping in my Libby app, and it's about to be ready for me to read. I think I'm gonna post a reading vlog per book. I'm just gonna do spoilers. I feel like at this point, it's been out for a long time. I feel like if you haven't read it yet, read it. So anyway, welcome to the reading vlog. I'm gonna make Brussels sprouts. Okay, so I just read the first chapter. I forgot that Gale and Katniss would enter in their names more than what is like legally required of them, because you can receive a year's worth of like oil and grain if you enter in your name again. So they would do that for every single family member every year. And then they go to talk about how families that are more financially well off have obviously an unfair advantage over other families that can't afford food because their name is less likely to be pulled because they don't have to enter in their name more than what is legally required of them. And then they even talk about how it creates like tension and grievances between classes, and literally Gale was like, yeah, and the Capitol set it up that way so that we would never rebel against them. Just so good. It's just so good the way that she like already chapter 1 sets that up. I've read a few more chapters. A couple things I forgot about. So Katniss volunteers as tribute, obviously. When she gets on stage, instead of giving applause, the District 12 crowd does the whole like the classic like Hunger Games motion. She explains that that's a signal specific to District 12 and it's supposed to mean like admiration or respect and like saying goodbye to a loved one, so they kind of use it during like funerals, which I didn't remember. If I had to choose one character that's me, it would be Prim. She's very sensitive and soft and emotional, which I don't think are bad qualities to have, but I think in the context of this world, that would be like really annoying to deal with. Katniss even explains that she tried teaching Prim how to hunt, and then like Prim got all teary-eyed when they killed an animal that they literally needed to eat in order to live. Also, they're like on the brink of death via starvation, and Prim's like, I think we should get a cat. There was no way in hell Prim was surviving these games, and I wouldn't survive them either. I feel like we've all asked ourselves that question before, like, oh, what would you do if you were in the Hunger Games? Die? I would die. I would be dead. I decorated for Christmas, but my lights keep falling from my room. I'm almost halfway through the book. I got to the part where Katniss is about to enter into the arena, and I have a few things to say. I remember there being a love triangle between Katniss, Gale, and Peeta. I don't know if that like eventually happens in the other books in the series, but I feel like whenever she talks about Gale, she friend zones him hardcore. She'll be like, yeah, we're like strictly platonic. He's like a brother to me. He taught me how to build a snare, but it was like non-sexual, just snare building. I am confused where the love triangle comes in. Did I make that up? Am I just like jumping the gun? That being said, I do think Peeta is a cutie sweetie pie. Right off the bat, he is so nice and just like has her best interest in mind. he's almost like accepting his fate and doing what he can to make sure Katniss wins because he just wants someone from District 12 to win and he thinks it can be her. They also have this moment together the morning before entering into the arena where he tells her that he wants to die on his own terms. Like, he doesn't want to lose himself or lose his identity from the games. And that was actually like really heartbreaking to read, considering I know what eventually happens to Peeta. Looking forward to reading about the games. We have met Rue, and I really don't want to read about that. For some reason, I thought that like no one really expected Katniss to win until like she was actually in the arena and starting to do well. But it feels like beforehand, her team that is helping her prepare for the Hunger Games all suspects that she actually has a chance to win. I also can't stop thinking about how like I would just die. I really think I would find food, hide in a tree, and just pray to God it's quick and fast. Anyway, fun thoughts for Saturday. I'm going to keep reading now, and I'm hoping I can finish this book today. Finished the Hunger Games last. I have a lot of thoughts and feelings. I'm going to try to go through them as succinctly as possible, but I have a tendency to ramble. Katniss entered the games and created an alliance with Rue. Something that I did not initially realize, I think when I first read the series, is how important Katniss's relationship with Rue is, because I think Rue's ultimate death was a huge part in what causes Katniss to want to eventually rebel against the Capitol. After Katniss befriends Rue, they start talking to each other about their life experiences in their own district. And this is the first time that Katniss has any insight as to what it's like to live in another district outside of her own, because Rue explains that they're the farming district, but all of their food gets distributed to the Capitol and they are still starving. It's very common for people to get whipped, like publicly whipped, by peacekeepers for stealing food, which is something that doesn't really exist in District 12 because the peacekeepers are just as starving as everyone else. Rue ultimately gets captured and killed in the games, and Katniss immediately avenges her death. She lays flowers around Rue's body and does the District 12 signal to the cameras to rebel against the Capitol, but also honor Rue's death. I think essentially what she's trying to point out is that this is an innocent 12-year-old girl that was murdered at the hands of the Capitol's entertainment. I think she's trying to humanize Rue and really hit home that she's not just like a pawn in some game that you're watching on TV. So then Katniss is alone in the games until the game maker makes an announcement that if both tributes from one district survive, there will be 2 Hunger Games winners this year. So she immediately finds Peeta. Peeta's not doing well. Peeta is on his way out. He has a cut on his leg from fighting Cato off earlier in the book to protect Katniss that is now infected. After he got injured, he escaped, crawled into a cave, and then like camouflaged himself and is just like laying on a cave floor waiting for, I have no idea. She finds him, she starts nursing him back to health. This is where it gets good. This is where I get very opinionated. Peeta reminds her that they are supposed to be in love. And this is because in Peeta's public interview, before they entered the Hunger Games, he reveals that he has a huge crush on Katniss and he's been in love with her his whole life. That was news to Katniss, but then she later finds out that that was a tactic that Peeta and Haymitch put together so that they both get more attention from the sponsors and hopefully more gifts. So once Peeta reminds her that they're supposed to be in love, she kisses him. And she gets sent like broth or something. Then Katniss puts together the more romance and affection that she shows to Peeta, the more gifts that they will get. So she starts putting on an Oscar nominee performance. She's trying to lay it on thick so that they get more supplies because really, Peeta needs medicine because he's starting to get blood poisoning. So Katniss eventually asks Peeta when he first started having feelings for her. Peeta starts telling her the story about how when he first saw Katniss, his dad had dropped him off to school, pointed over to Katniss and said, "I wanted to marry her mom." I have a few things to say about this. Is that not a weird ass thing to tell your son? You point over to a little girl in his class and say, "I wanted to marry her mom instead of your mom." And don't get me wrong, Peeta's mom is not the victim here. Earlier in the story, Peeta reveals that he pretended to accidentally burn a loaf of bread, and she slapped him across the face. He ended up purposely burning that bread to feed it to Katniss because you noticed that Katniss was starving. Whatever. His mom is an asshole, but it's still a weird thing to say to your son, first of all. Second of all, he repeats this information to Katniss. And Katniss, and he was like, "Oh, and also you were wearing a red dress." And so then Katniss is like, this is starting to feel like a real true story that Peeta is sharing with me. This doesn't feel like something that he just made up, because I was in fact wearing a red dress the first day of school. So this is when Katniss starts clocking that Peeta might actually have feelings for her. But not only that, she's also processing that Peeta's dad wanted to marry her mom, which I think is weird. I think it's a weird detail to include in the book. It's also a weird story. It's yeah, my dad told me that he wanted to out of your mom, and that's when I knew. That's when I knew you were the girl for me. It's a weird story, I'm sorry. And also, this is being broadcasted across the country. I want to be a fly on the wall in the Malark family living room as they're all gathered around the TV and watching Peeta reveal that his dad wanted to marry Katniss's mom. But as I mentioned before, this is when Katniss starts kind of realizing that Peeta actually has feelings for her. So now she's in a position where she either has to continue to lead Peeta on or die. She eventually risks her life to get medicine for his leg. And it works. And once Peeta is finally healed, they now have to go into the woods and start hunting. Katniss is explaining when you're hunting, you have to be extremely still and extremely quiet. And Peeta is just aggressively hobbling through the forest. And she's he is scaring away all of the animals. And I really love this part in the story because it even shows the class distinction between Katniss and Peeta. Peeta and his family weren't well off by any means, but because his dad owned a bakery, he never had to worry about food growing up, whereas Katniss had to illegally cross the fence or the borderline of District 12 with Gale and hunt for food in order to make sure that her family stays alive. And it's such a big difference that's emphasized in just this one scene where Katniss is the fact that I had to struggle my entire life is the sheer reason that I can win these games, because all of these privileged assholes don't know what it's like to be on survival mode 24/7. I also couldn't stop thinking about she's probably getting the ick so hard from Peeta just stomping through the forest while she's bitch, I'm trying to literally the entire sequence of when she finds Peeta to when they end up leaving the games. It's Katniss is just carrying Peeta's dead weight on her fucking back. Oh, another thing I forgot to mention. Earlier, I was confused because I thought that a love triangle didn't actually exist. It does. It does exist. And I think it just hasn't happened yet, because while Katniss is kissing Peeta, in her mind, she's thinking about Gale. And before, when she was friend-zoning Gale, I think she didn't realize what she wanted. The only thing she's ever known is, I need to hunt to keep my family alive. She's never had the privilege to even consider a romantic relationship with anyone. So yeah, no shit. She just considers Gale a friend. I just don't think she was ever put in a position where she could be romantic with anyone. And now that she is kind of forced to in this weird up way, she's confused by her feelings towards everyone. More to say on that later. Peeta and Katniss are the last two standing in the games. Then the game maker announces that, just kidding, actually only one tribute can win. Peeta is just basically just kill me. And then she comes up with a plan. She takes 2 poisonous berries and she's we're both going to eat these poisonous berries at the same time, and we're both going to die. They're going to Romeo and Juliet themselves. In her head, she was there's no way the Capitol will allow there to be 0 winners. And so her and Peeta go to eat the berry, and then right before they actually eat it, he's just kidding, you guys can both win. So, yay, they win, get pulled out of the arena, Peeta loses his leg. Haymitch reveals to her that President Snow is pissed that she pulled that shit with the berries, because he views that as an act of rebellion towards the Capitol, which it was. And Haymitch was basically like, your only angle is to pretend that you are so in love with Peeta that you cannot even conceptualize living without him, and therefore that's why you did it, to protect both of you. And at the very end of the book, she kind of makes it known, once her and Peeta are finally alone, that she doesn't really have these feelings for him. And Peeta has the audacity to get mad at her for that. I love Peeta, okay? If my choices are Peeta or that slimy little weasel back home, I'm choosing Peeta every single time. But you're the one that publicly revealed that you're in love with her. You put her into a position where she either had to pretend to be in a relationship with you or die. And then when she reveals to you, hey, I don't actually really have these feelings, you get mad at her. I remember when I first read this, again, I think I was like a teenager, and I remember being upset with Katniss for not just like having feelings for Peeta, and just be with Peeta. It's not that hard. But reading this as an adult, reading this with a fully developed frontal cortex, I'm like, yeah, no shit, she doesn't have feelings for Peeta. He coerced her into a relationship and then got mad that she didn't love him back. Don't piss me off. That's actually emotionally manipulative. She's already traumatized, and on top of that, you have this motherfucker putting so much pressure on her to figure out what she wants and who she likes and how she feels. Also, you're welcome, by the way, for saving your life. You're welcome. I rated the book 5 stars. I feel like I had to. I was debating 4 stars, but then I was like, why? It's good and I love it. It didn't feel like reading. It was just like purely entertaining while also making really good commentary. That's it for the video. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Leia. Be sure to check out next week when I post about reading Catching Fire.